Are you scared of the dark, or just of what's in it?
Since the beginning of time, mankind has had one prolific enemy: darkness. We have tried to find many ways to combat the darkness by creating artificial light previously only available to us during the daytime. But what exactly makes darkness so scary? In its most literal sense, darkness is scary because you can't see. If I put this light out, aside from maybe a few lights behind me, you can't really see anything. Now, for ancient humans, this posed a problem. Lots of predators like to hunt at night and in the dark, and so when it was dark out, you couldn't see what was potentially attacking you. So basically what I'm saying is fear of the dark is completely primal. It's an old fear that goes way back and still exists within our own genetic makeup as kind of a subconscious lingering fear that we don't even know exists until we're confronted with it head on for the first time. Ironically enough, humans are born in darkness, and when they open their eyes for the first time, I'm saying they like I'm not a human, and when we open our eyes for the first time, we start to cry because the light is bright and scary. Now, this might be the only time in the human life cycle that light is what is scary to us. When children reach toddler age is usually when the fear of the dark begins to develop, and this is why so many kids sleep with a light on, sleep with night lights, what have you. For years, I have slept with a light on somewhere near my room or in my room simply because I didn't like the pitch black. The fear of the dark is something that every human at some point in their life must face and conquer. You'll either be scared of it the rest of your life, or you'll go into the dark with the respect for the danger it poses, but also knowing the fact that the darkness itself is not what you're scared of. Two of the most prominent concepts within modern horror are that of liminal space and the Uncanny Valley. Now, what this has to do with the dark, I'll get to in a minute. But for right now, I want to kind of define liminal space and give some examples of what that might look like. I think most famously now, the best example of liminal space would be the back rooms, but you can go on Google and search liminal space and you'll get hundreds of pictures of just these creepy rooms, is basically what it is. But it's what makes these places creepy where the liminal space idea comes in. So yeah, it's a different day, I'm in a different room, wearing different clothes, whatever. But what actually makes liminal spaces creepy is the fact that it looks like people should be there, but they're not. In its most textbook definition, a gas station is a perfect liminal space because it is a transition between one place to another. Gas stations are hardly ever a destination, rather a pit stop from point A to point B. But once you incorporate darkness into an already liminal space, that's when things start to get really creepy. Sticking with the gas station thing, let's think about a gas station at night. Now, there's something about a gas station at night that honestly just has always kind of creeped me out, especially one of the local gas stations around here. No one's there past a certain time, so when you're there at night, it does seem particularly off-putting. There's something about darkness that enhances this. A gas station where nobody's there in the middle of the day is not quite so off-putting as it being at night, simply because it's dark and you can't see past the lights of the gas station itself. I do want to go on a quick side tangent here about something called the Uncanny Valley, and I believe that the Uncanny Valley and liminal space all kind of work and interweave into one similar concept of something familiar but not quite right. Now, the Uncanny Valley is what makes things like AI robots kind of creepy, or most of all, claymation. It's these things that we recognize as a human, but it's not moving right, it's not acting how it should, something is just off about it. Now, this has kind of been discovered to be a primal instinct that is kind of built into our genetics and DNA, that we automatically fear things that don't look quite human, which leads to a kind of disturbing question as to what did we deal with in the past that was almost human
but not quite, and that posed a threat to us. Now, some people will ponder on this and think about aliens or something horrifying, some kind of shapeshifter, skinwalker, things like that. However, I think it's a little more simple than that. It's no secret that Homo sapiens, that's us, are not the only hominids, or weren't the only hominids at a certain point in time. There were the Neanderthals and the Homo erectus. Now, I think in particular Homo erectus is rather frightening looking. Neanderthals are a little frightening looking, but to me it makes complete sense that we would have this primal fear in our brains of things that don't quite look right. Because more than likely, Neanderthals, I think it's pronounced Neanderthals, but I'm saying Neanderthals. Neanderthals and Homo erectus were possibly at war with Homo sapiens at some point when it came to resources, as human beings often are at war for resources. So the idea that we're scared of things that are almost human but not quite actually makes a lot of sense. I do also want to talk about how the word darkness is used in other ways other than describing something being without light. At least in the absolute most basic light versus dark, as in lights on, lights off kind of a dynamic. Oftentimes certain elements of literature or film or any other type of media are described as dark, particularly horror type things. The subject matter is dark, or how often have you heard, wow, this just got dark? What exactly are we meaning when we say something like that? Now, while I do think this is just an example of people saying things that they've heard and it applies correctly just by chance and they don't really know exactly what they're talking about, I think it actually does work within the context of what these people are saying. I do want to think about this for a second in spiritual terms, or at least metaphysical terms. Light is often associated with good, darkness is associated with bad. Because darkness is scary, as previously established, you can't see anything. Now, darkness bad, light good. So when something turns to something morally corrupt, morally evil, it would be a shift into a darkness, an absence of good. Oftentimes, particularly in movies or video games, any kind of visual media, a darker story element would be signified by actual dark lighting within said movie or video game or whatever. This means that the color palette of the movie would be like grays and blacks and washed out colors, or in older movies simply no color at all and a lot of uses of shadow and not a whole lot of use of light. This is why film noir has its name. Noir means black or dark. These were the first kind of movies that showed morally ambiguous plot lines and characters and things like that. And so to signify that, these directors chose to use lighting to their advantage and tell more about the story with the way the scene looked than with what the characters were doing and or saying within the story. Yes, a painting just randomly popped up in the background. Sorry, this has been so sporadic with the filming. But I do want to get kind of heavy for a second. Or dark, if you will. The world we live in now is full of darkness. War, poverty, anxiety, depression. These are all words that we hear on a daily basis. And they're things that are going on every second of every day. People are being robbed, people are being murdered, people are murdering themselves. All of these things, and it's easy to say that the world is a dark place. This goes back to my distinction of darkness being bad, light representing good. There's not a lot of good in the world today, and it's really easy to get bogged down into that darkness and become dark yourself. You see other people getting away with so many things like small little thefts or just being a jerk and not caring about your fellow man, that it seems like, well, my good deed doesn't really go noticed, so why should I even bother? Now this creates something worse than just a division between darkness and light. This creates a vacuum of light, and that darkness is simply sucking the light, or the bad is sucking the good out of the world. Now, because of my personal beliefs, I believe that every human being has the capability of being good and being the light. And as well, they have the capability of being dark. So we have a moral dilemma. Do we feed the dark, or do we combat the dark? What I encourage you to do is look within yourself, find the darkness, and find the light, and emphasize the light within yourself. Emphasize the good, things that you do, things you're good at, things you do well. Take that good and put it into the world and apply yourself and shine your light into the darkness, because, as a wise wizard once said, it's the small things that keep the darkness at bay. Thank you so much for watching.